So I'd like to first introduce Andrea Novicki, and her faculty partner is Dr. Heather Hill. I see both of them here, and this one is entitled Scaffolding Opportunities for Independent Learning in a Culturally Responsive Approach to Makerspace Curriculum and Learning. So thank you to both of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you as well. I will share my screen.
Okay, you're gonna okay.
Yeah. All right. All right, well, I guess I'll go ahead and read. What do we have? 12 minutes, 14 minutes? I won't linger. I am honored to be working with Andrea Novicki. I'm Heather Hill. Heather Hill. I'm a faculty member at CSU. Andrea, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Andrea Novicki. I am a technology teacher at Springfield Local Schools in the Akron area. And it has been, this whole program has been amazing. And I have to give a quick shout out to Dr. Hill. Like, she has inspired me to be better, and she has put up with my crazy from the get-go. So I appreciate all of that. A little bit about what I teach at Springfield. I teach 5 different preps. We are a 712 building, so I teach a class called Creative Solutions and Design for both junior high and high school, and have an entry level and advanced classes of both of those, and then also teach animation. What I basically do is I have a makerspace class. So in the context of our research, really what we were looking at is how schools do makerspaces. And traditionally, a lot of schools that have makerspaces, it is just an open space that students come to use just at their leisure. Or sometimes that a teacher can check out and kind of bring them as a lab environment and complete an activity. And the question that I have asked in those environments, it only invites students who already possess the skill set. So in that, I guess the research question ended up being, how do you teach creativity? How do you teach makerspace to be inclusive to all students, not just students who are already inclined or have that specific innate belief that they already are there? So we structured it as an actual class where students come in and engage in makerspace activities daily, and they get high school credit for it. And so one of the specific ways we looked at is assessing that environment. And so our second research question was, what role does the grid method play in standards mastery? Because that environment to scaffold self-direction and kind of self-exploration and foster a sense of independence, how do you structure that to kind of for that differentiated approach that all students are where they need to be when they need to be there. So those are the things we looked at.
Mm-hmm. And much of the experiences that Andrew was having in the classroom very much align with what the research was already suggesting. There's an abundance of research that speaks about the educational benefits of makerspaces, the importance of project-based learning for developing students who have 21st century skills, and talk about the importance of teachers in those contexts. But very little scholarship examines the assessment practices, right? Because most of it is most of the activities in makerspaces are often student-centered and student-directed, and the prize factor of those contexts tend to be autonomy. So this study sought to understand, how do we facilitate a makerspace environment? How do we scaffold participation and structure it in a way that ensures that all kids have access to learning? But to do that, we first wanted to understand the context. And really the bulk of the study is about trying to understand what we need to think about as it relates to assessing those skills, those knowledge, and those dispositions.
So the methods we kind of went through in exploring this makerspace classroom environment. I attended some professional development that focused on what is called the grid method. And the grid method basically is a method of boxes, right? That when a student starts, right, they get the whole unit. They're like, this is where you need to be. This is the standard, right? This is where everybody has to end up. And they are aligned to Webb's depth of knowledge. So the first bar, there's like 4 or 5 tiers because you can extend it a little further. And that first is your recall. So the basic things that the students need to go, and it's kind of almost like a Candyland board that students are working through. So they will do 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, depending on the unit. And then there's check-in points at each box. So students are working at their own pace. Why everybody needs to get to the standard. Everybody needs to meet the standard that is being taught in the unit, right? But some students move quicker than others. So they move then to an extension activity already built into the unit that is at DOK level 4, and that extends their thinking. So for example, when my students they were making virtual dream rooms, right? And they created the space and then walked through it through virtual reality. They started with tutorials. That was their DOK level 1. Can you go access the library and put in furniture? Can you import an OBJ file from Tinkercad? This is how you do it, that basic level of learning. And then you would move up, right? Okay, so then the next level, you're adding furniture, you're actually building your house, right? The third level involved coding, right? So then they were using that strategic thinking. Here's code. How can I use this to, when I click on a door, it opens so I can get into the room? How can I use this to turn the sink on to make it look like it turns on? The shower, the drawers. How can I open the drawers, right? All of these elements. And then that was the standard, 3C. Everybody needed to get to 3C, right? Those students who finished 3C went on level 4A, which was, okay, this is all of the learning targets, right? We learned coding, we learned this, we learned that. Create your own blank space. What can you create that uses all these things in a way that speaks to you, right? Some of them created mazes, parkour games, right? If they were at that level. Some are still working through the first 3 levels of the grid because that's where they need to be. Because all students have to get to 3C, content mastery, standards mastery. But some who are ready can still have that extension. And in the same respect, those who have level 2, I can work with and work with them towards standards mastery so nobody gets left behind. So that is the basics of the grid method. We also looked at student work samples, student observations, and then we polled students to really get a feel for where they were with wellness checks into the social emotional journey. Because what we're looking at through this is the makerspace classroom in particular is not just about content mastery. It's about social emotional awareness and leaning into the difficulty, believing they can do it. And one of the students, for example, Alejandro, he almost dropped the class. And I said, okay, well, before right, what are we thinking? And he goes, I'm an artist. I don't know anything about technology. And I worked with him because we were going through the grid. And just last week he was like, and this was like week 1, he was ready to quit. He's like, I'm an artist. I don't do tech. And I said, well, let's look at how we can take what you're comfortable with and extend it to be what you're beyond comfortable with, right? To push yourself a little bit. And he did not drop, and he is thriving. He adores, right? So looking at those student observations and looking at this methodology and measuring its effectiveness in scaffolding creativity and innovation and self-direction.
But the process that we utilize to sort of get closer to students' understandings, Andrea did an amazing job creating this grid, creating the modules, creating the varied assignments to support students in moving through the tasks. But we integrated different levels of wellness to see how students were interacting with the grid. And our first level of questions was simply, what are you finding helpful? What questions remain? Just to get an idea of where students stood. But as you can see, those types of questions for students who are very much literal thinkers gave us not much. Well, it gave us data, of course, as qualitative researchers, it gave us data, but it showed us.
Ready?
What'd you
Okay.
say? Oh, but that the kinds of questions we ask have to be intentional in pulling out more from them. So our next phase of wellness slips, we were specific and intentional in asking questions that spoke to the socio-emotional dimensions of the making experience, their frustrations, things that excited them, areas of support. And as you can see, students, it pulled out a lot more from, they were able to pull out a lot more from their experiences. And by the third time, we started thinking about culturally responsive practices and how we might get students to tap into some of their strengths so they can begin to self-identify where they are succeeding, where they are finding connections to the projects and the activities. And these questions pulled out another range of responses. And so our work today was really analyzing all of the data that was collected and really trying to understand what is that telling us about how to structure and scaffold learning in the future. And these were some of our findings.
We have a very, I would say about 60%, and it's probably higher because at the high school level especially, they will not they're uncomfortable filling out the paperwork. Many students do not apply for fee waiver and free and reduced lunch, but we're at about 60%. And what we found is they're very literal thinkers. So when you ask a question about their learning, they see it almost as a worksheet. Either I can answer this question or I can't. And we were really after getting them to understand it's not just about content knowledge, it's not just teaching them the content, it's teaching them how to teach themselves, right? It had that metacognitive piece, and moving them beyond literal thinking, which is why we had to shift our questioning a bit to get them to be more self-reflective about the non-content pieces that are important in the classroom, like collaboration. There was some positive self-reporting, but they were at the end, they were starting to kind of not only embrace, but share their experiences in terms of challenges in the making process. At the end, the grid method was not enough by itself. Why it's a good structural piece, it's not enough to fully scaffold the learning. And we are going to implement some changes next year in terms of student conferencing and schedules and keeping a more regimented schedule. So
There's
for
about
example,
1 minute left.
yes, Monday and Tuesdays will be mandatory check-in days instead of me just always floating to students who need it, having a more structured cognitive and socio-emotional approach.
Mm-hmm. And the data, really, kids were really, their responses pointed to cognitive needs, socio-emotional needs, and also cultural needs. Students gave us an understanding that they obviously need support engaging across those lower to higher order thinking tasks, and we need to support those different cognitive tasks, particularly as they increase to that level of creating something. But they also spoke to some socio-emotional needs. They need support and scaffold to overcome frustration, insecurity, confidence, right? Disconnection and detachment from projects that may not be something they are necessarily wanting to do. And then they also spoke to some cultural needs, the need or sense for cultural representation and thinking about how we can create opportunities for kids to bring their identities into the space. And also to build those interpersonal communication strategies, because in some cases they're working in teams as well. So implications, as Andrea was alluding to, will be to dive into each of those components and think about how we might add to the grid method and elaborate on it to better support students in a makerspace classroom.
Fantastic job. You guys, Andrew and Vicky, Dr. Hill, you all passed what I call the coffee test. It's when someone tells me something new. I'm not a coffee drinker, but when someone tells me something new and I think, oh, I need to grab coffee with them because there's a lot of exciting things I want to talk about. So I've got more than 5 minutes worth, but I want to condense this into initial thoughts, a question for you, and then follow-up. Does that make sense? All right. Initial thoughts. Your first slide you put up, I'm not an artist. Some kid says that, and you later talked about Alejandro. As I'm listening to your presentation, my initial thought is, wow. I'm sorry, your kid said, I am an artist, so this is going to be hard for me. My first thought was, I'm not an artist, and there's no way in the world I'm going to be able to do that. But the Alejandro point brings up a really interesting piece about, you obviously believe you can teach creativity, yes? How do you measure it?
And that is one of the things we looked at. What a lot of it honestly is reflective and I think student belief. Because what I always tell my students, the common misconception is that creativity is a skill you either have or do not have. And it is not, it is something that is practiced and reflective. What's really interesting, and there's good moments and bad moments. Like kids, it's up and down, and it is hard to measure because it's an abstract concept. But I think that is what is kind of magical about the maker space. And I think that's where the social emotional element comes in, because it's more about belief. Right? It's more about belief than it is, because creativity, like it's kind of like art. You can look at the same piece of art and people can view it differently. I think it's honestly more about student belief system, because what we teach them is to be dependent on us as educators, right? And then they'll go out into this world and they don't have us anymore, right?
Sure.
You have to teach them self-reliance, self-belief, and I think that it's hard to quantify, right? But sometimes the things that are most valuable that we learn are not quantifiable.
Mm-hmm.
Good night. I will ride in that car with you all day long. Here's the thing. As I'm jotting down, if you could see the paper I have a bunch of circles with arrows connected to them. Because one of the marks of a really strong research agenda is not the study in front of you, it's all of the different pieces, and it becomes sort of a plan moving forward. Here's what I wrote. The grid. I wanted to hear a great deal more about the grid and the making of the grid and the thought process that goes into that, because I think that's sort of a fruitful area. What was effective is, I assume what you came up with and shared with students was not the first draft of what the grid was. So just that process of creation was really fantastic. Classroom management, man, that's a question. What does classroom management look like, particularly as your kids begin to get frustrated, as they move up into more complex tasks? How do you manage that space? There's probably tons of stories there. Resilience. I underlined resilience 3 different times. The Alejandro story really kind of drove it home. I believe what you're doing is you're creating resilient students, and everything about the way you're using the space and the way you're providing feedback to them speaks to the idea of resilience. That transition from literal thinking to abstract thinking is huge, and how you use questioning strategies to bring that point. There are 50,000, and I didn't even get to the culturally responsive pieces of that. But let me end on this point, because I'm going to go over my 5 minutes. What's next? Okay, you've done this. You've gotten through a cycle with this particular group of students. What happens next? As you begin in the fall, you'll have access to the space again, I assume, yes?
Yes, this is my classroom. This is what I do.
Okay.
So right now the plan is to continue with what we're doing. And to talk about some of the things we've learned is a more structured conference time. So for example, right now I'm thinking Mondays and Tuesdays, I have set schedule with every student that I have in a class period, and that is my time with them. While that is going on, there is a parking lot in a Google Doc where if they have a question, right, instead of interrupting another student's conference time, they will type it in there and they will respond to each other. So furthering that collaborative environment. Then based on conferences Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday will be as needed conferences and differentiated piece. And we talked about getting routine, setting up a routine and structure to teach self-direction and self-independence, right? That's what I think the next steps are, looking at how to manage classroom management for self-direction and independence instead of teacher-centric.
Okay.
Thank you so
Excellent.
much. This is excellent. I'm going to move on because I want to make sure that everybody has enough time to get their feedback as well. So let's move on to the next project, computer science education, creating an elementary school program with our action researcher, Jennifer Kinkoff, and our faculty partner, Dr. Elena Andrea.
Thank you very much. I am attempting to share my screen here. Here we go. Oop. Oh, maybe. There we go. Okay. Is it visible? Awesome. Thank you. So my name is Jennifer Kinkoff. I am a media specialist for the Aurora City School District. Aurora is about kind of halfway between Akron and Cleveland, on the northeast part of the state. We are a suburban district. I am the only media specialist for our district, but I am assigned to our grades 3, 4, 5 building. So I'm like in the specials rotation. I have all the kids. There is about 700 of them each week for 42 minutes. And my fabulous partner with Dr. Andrea. Would you, Elena, be able to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Jennifer. You are the fabulous partner in this work.
Please.
Andre, and I'm an associate professor of TESOL here at Cleveland State, and I was very excited to partner and work with Jennifer, trying to explore computer science in elementary education. We know there is a lot of focus on computer science for high schoolers, but not so much for elementary school. So the work that she has been doing for this action research is really cutting edge, because we try, the earlier the students are exposed to computer science, the more they will become interested down the road. So there's not a lot of research out there. We are really trying to figure out computer science. Jennifer is computer science elementary schools.
Yes. So I to be honest, my first topic was completely not computer science. I was looking at how to create a diverse collection within an elementary school library, keeping in mind the student population. But I changed. I had decided, talking with Elena, and I switched over because I've been feeling very passionate about computer science. And in the last few months, computer science has been a huge topic within the state of Ohio, and increasing the number of students who have access to computer science and that type of learning. So in my particular district, we have two official courses in computer science. One is our middle school. There is they have a 6-week rotation of specials. So for 6 weeks, once or twice a year, they have it's called computer tech, which is a lot of like creating online portfolios. There is some coding. It's kind of like a mishmash of stuff. Then the other course is AP Computer Science at the high school. And when I first started inquiring about this in the district, told, we're good. We got enough. It'll be fine. And I'm like, no, this doesn't make sense. I mean, how many kids do you actually into a computer science when they might not have had any type of experiences so far in this field? And that kids love exploring, kids love to play and tinker. I wanted to know, how can we get this brought into our groups, and how do you make that argument for it so that other people will appreciate, the other stakeholders will want to be involved in this. So my much of the year was spent researching, reading, because I wanted to make sure I had a full idea of what computer science is, how it stands throughout the state, and just why there seems to be mostly programming for middle and high school. Like, what's the holdup? Why aren't we interested in bringing this to elementary schools? After that, I started looking at specifically the variety of standards that are available, and the different curricula that is, just, produced and available online. And then if a standalone class is not available or isn't feasible for a school with elementary, what are the other options, so that we still have computer science being taught with these younger children. Lastly, then, have been doing an audit of my own practices, trying to figure out where I could improve and what I need to do that. So the one thing that is important to know is that computer science, a lot of people think it's keyboarding or it's coding, and it's not. There's so much more to it. It's more of a way of thinking. It's a way of solving problems, and those types of skills are so important to our students. Creative thinking, creative problem solving. How can, I've got this problem in front of me, what do I do? Yesterday I had a student, Mrs. Kankoff, my computer's lagging. Like, okay, what do you, okay. And they're like, well, it's lagging. I said, okay, what do you want me to do? They're like, well, fix it. Okay, how? They're like, well, I don't know. And I said, well, what could you do? And it's getting them to recognize that they have the skills they need. They just need to have a little bit more confidence in themselves to try out those skills, knowing that they're not going to break something. It's just, you need to be able to use the skills that you have. I have, in looking at our districts around the state, I have found that my district is not a rare find, in that it mostly has things only for high school and middle school. And one of the big differences, though, is that in middle school and high school, they have electives. Kids can choose the courses they take, whereas in elementary schools, if it's time for science, you're going to science. Everybody's going to do science and at the same time, and everybody's going to do math at the same time, and there isn't that opportunity to choose. So when there's that type of a structure, there really isn't time to teach computer science on its own. But that's okay, because computer science shouldn't be on its own. Computer science should be taught within the context of everyday real life problems. So if it's time for science, great. let's do some coding. Let's talk about if we could build some amazing machine to get rid of all of the pollution in the world. What would that machine look like? What and that in that design thinking, we're talking computer science. But now the just recently in the last maybe 8 years, the state of Ohio has put a bigger push on the idea of computer science and having people graduating from our high schools and going into computer science as an area of study. And there are, I'm trying to remember what my next, oh, okay. There are many reasons for this, but one of them is that the area of computer science is so much more needed because the as the quote right there says is that this area of career is projected to grow so much faster because so many companies are trying to put are looking at robots and robotics and programming in order to solve some of everyday problems. Knowing that time is of essence, this video that I have, I won't share it right now. If there's time, I will at the end. But it basically says like, computer science is changing everything. And one thing that I didn't realize is that, like, for example, in agriculture, there's now this like lettuce machine that helps farmers to analyze their soil, know where to plant, and then they're yielding much healthier product. They're being able to like get a handle on the different types of problems they might have growing in a particular season because their machines that are picking up analyzing the soil are being able that those machines are analyzing this and giving them a report back saying, hey, this is too high in this element, or you're going to have a problem here. And so it's giving them so much information that they can have a better yield. And it's just in so many different parts of our economy. So we want, because of course Ohio wants to be, you know, number one in everything, which is understandable. Ohio, the governor, the government has realized that we got to be developing and producing more computer scientists, people that want to look at solving problems in a different kind of way. Oh, hold on. No, don't play. Don't play. Okay. So one of the other things I had done was did a study of the different kinds of standards. And there are so many. Like that was one thing that I was like, oh my gosh, like what standards do we go by? The Computer Science Teachers Association, which is a national organization, they have a set of standards. Then the International Society for Technology and Education, they have standards. And then there's a computer science framework that kind of was developed throughout states and districts. So it's kind of like, again, another national one. And then at the state level, we have computer science standards. We also have technology standards, which when I first heard them, I'm like, well, aren't they one and the same? And when I looked at it, it's not. The writers of the computer science standards really put a focus on the different elements that make up computer science, like programming and analyzing problems and taking them apart and putting things back together. It's not as much. I'm sorry?
There's less than 2 minutes left.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So there's just so much that goes into it. One of the things I did then after getting all these standards together is I just started looking into just what's available online right now, and there's so much. Like it was overwhelming. So it's been a slow process, but I started looking at the different curricula and analyzing, okay, what is great about this, San Francisco United School District. So they have this whole framework, and it's everything's there and it's free and anybody can use it. And so I just started looking at what are the pros, what are the cons. If I want to do this, if I want to use something like this to frame my teaching next year, is there one that I might want to use? So I just, kind of went through and just started putting those kinds of things together. I had the opportunity to attend Ohio's technology conference. And while there were a ton of different options of things to go learn about, I tried to focus on the ones that were about computer science and computational thinking, so that I could identify resources to use, other ways to incorporate computer science into my teaching.
You are
And
at
just,
the 14-minute mark. I just want to let you know.
thank you. And to just to be able to, build my arsenal of options. I've also had a chance to connect with some really amazing people through that. So in my audit of what I currently do, I found that, well, actually, I do use a lot more computer science than I thought. But I also found a lot of holes and realized that I can get some other resources. We just received our new robots. We're going to be looking at electronics next year, and we're gonna. I'm trying to get the Adafruit circuit playgrounds, as well as little bits, so kids can look at electricity and how it flows. Those different circuits they can do. I have been accepted into to be able to use one of the Ohio Teach CS grants that if you're not familiar, Teach CS, the governor pushed through a grant for $6 million that has allowed K-12 educators to take computer science courses. So those classes start very, very soon, in a couple weeks. So I'm really excited to be able to bring more in, and then after that, be able to take it to my district leaders and say, okay, let's formulate something a little bit more formal for all of our elementaries. That's that. In time.
I think you made it. Can everyone hear me? I can see. Okay. Mrs. Kinkoff and Dr. Andre, fantastic job. These are a lot of fun. I'm right down the road from you. I am in Solon, so I'm fairly familiar with your district. Spent some time there. Found it incredibly interesting that there is no formalized computer science course for elementary students. There's an individual I know Dr. Andre knows that you should probably touch base with at CSU, a woman named Crystal Franklin, who is doing her dissertation. Have you met? I see maybe the name has come up at some point in time.
Yeah,
She's
and
I'm sorry.
I just said her name has come up. Yep, we've
Yes.
emailed a bit.
I think that would be a very, very good contact because she's doing some work similar in the CMSD district to what you're doing. Okay, lots of stuff written down, definitely more than 5 minutes, so I'll talk quickly. I love the work that you're doing, the idea of taking advantage of kids' opportunity to explore the idea of problem-based learning. I have a few ideas for you to think about as you move forward with this work, and then a question I'll close with. I love the courage of doing a course audit for yourself, just on here are the skills, the core skills you want to think about in terms of computer science education and how that works with my classroom. What I wrote down as a note is, boy, would it be fun to do a comparison between you and the other folks in your building and see the extent to which those skills are showing up. And then in a bigger sense, do within building and then between buildings and then between districts, because you're right. I feel like back when dinosaurs walked the earth and I first understood computer science education was what you did in front of a keyboard. It's a very different reality now in terms of problem-based skill set, which I think is very interesting. Um, Here's my question, because one of the points you didn't talk about that came up to me, what about ethics? In other words, I have a high school teacher I'd spoken with who had students who were using some kind of a platform to plagiarize papers. And then when they were caught, they said, we never learned ahead of time how to not do this. To what extent do you think that should be part of your computer science instruction for the little folks? Uh-oh,
I personally think it, oh, I'm sorry. I
go good.
personally think that it's very important. And I do every year right from wrong. We have a lot of conversations about, okay, so you're not supposed to, like, let's say if you find a picture of somebody scantily clad, you're not supposed to show that to your friends, but do you? Like, well, yeah, but why? What, like, and so I try to get into the whys a lot with the kids, like, why do you do this? As well, this year it's been a very fun. We took a big deep dive into fake. We looked at, websites, just books, different things that we thought were for real, and then to come to find out they're not. And we learned some ways to avoid falling, victim to fake news. But then I had them create their own, and they used Canva to merge 2 or 3 different animal body parts together. And what they created, it looks, I mean, they're amazing. Like, they look real. And we have them hanging around the building now, like, to see if anybody will fall for it. Like, do you think it's real? Because, and just to see, and more or less, like, do you see how real this is? Like, or how easy this is? Because people are doing this all the time. So you have to be a very wise person and be willing to not believe something you see. I think it's very important.
It's fantastic work. There's a lot of great areas you can go from here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank
All
you.
right, we're going to move to our last presentation here. Pause for thought, implementing a classroom dog in elementary education, honoring the life and legacy of Leslie Croft. We have our action researcher, Whit Croft, with us this evening, and welcoming back our faculty partner, Dr. Heather Hill.
Okay. Yeah, hello again, everyone. This particular presentation is a little bit different. Oh my gosh, I'm not. Anyway, this is okay. So, probably, like, I'm supposed to be the person who has it together to pull it through, and I have the brief amount of time to be able to work with Leslie Croft. She was a 30-year veteran in teaching. And in 2022, she was the Region 9 Teacher of the Year. And at the time that we were able to engage through this action research project, she was a second grade teacher at the Shockton Elementary School. And she was just very much interested in trying to create home spaces for her students. She had two in particular, two boys who were from foster care environments. And she was noticing within them some resilient or some reluctance and some resistance to engaging in reading and writing practices. And she was trying to understand, how do we create an environment where kids want to learn? And she had also been doing a lot of research in terms of therapy dogs. And so her interest and her needs sort of align with our participation in action research. And what we found, like in looking for research, is that although there are studies that indicate the benefits of animal assistant programming, particularly for increasing reading skills and creating spaces where kids' well-being is considered, most of those studies are not done in classroom settings. Most are conducted in short-term intervention settings, in places and spaces sort of outside of structured curriculum. And so they haven't been examined in those settings, particularly in a second grade classroom. And we also found that the studies didn't typically utilize an intersectional focus. So they didn't speak to the ways in which the services or the presence of the dogs would affect boys versus girls, how they influence kids or affected kids based on their unique marginalized positions. And so our time together was really about designing instruments. It was a qualitative approach to understanding their experiences and to understanding the effects or the influence of the presence of a therapy dog. And we'd also designed some literally, oh my God, let me get out of here. We were also planning, ways to embed literature as well. So in my time with her, we had opportunity to apply for the Action Research Grant, which we were able to get. And through the course of, getting the funds for that, her first action step was getting Ruger, as you see, the dog that would be utilized to be trained to go into the classroom. So unfortunately, we weren't able to make that journey together, but luckily she has an amazing family who has taken up her mantle and are really working to translate her vision into action. And so for our time together, I really just wanted to center their voices and give them space to talk about the work that they're doing in the schools. So introducing Whitcroft, which is her husband.
I wouldn't say I got a project off the ground. I just kind of reached out to you, kind of update you with what was going on, and kind of led into where we are today. That's kind of how it was. I was last fall, after Les's passing. I wouldn't say I got a project off the ground. I just kind of reached out to you, kind of update you with what was going on, and kind of led into where we are today. That's kind of how it was. I was last fall, after Les's passing. I decided to do something for myself and therapy for myself, and brought Ruger into it, knowing that her goal was to get a puppy, train it, and get it into a classroom. And then last fall, I decided, well, sounds like a chore that I could do, and I'm in the process of trying to achieve it still. Ruger has some more training to get through, but we're hoping to be ready for this fall and to get into a classroom.
Okay. So the context of where in which the work continues is situated in Coshocton Elementary School, where Leslie was a second grade teacher, and also where her daughter serves as an intervention specialist. The trainer who connected with, her name is Ashton, and you'll hear, folks talk about her in the interviews, but this is the legacy team, if you will. Introducing Darby Smith, which is her daughter. She'll share a little bit about the context for Ruger going into school?
Mentioned the third grade, mild to moderate disabilities. So it's mainly students who have our specific learning disabilities. We just have simple basic IEP goals that we work with. This year I have a total of 11. I also go outside of our elementary school and provide services to a private Catholic school once a week as well, to which there are 7. There were going to be 8, but then I had a baby, so we haven't gotten through that process yet. 7 there, but we haven't brought Ruger out there yet. But at Coshocton, I have 11 students that I see for various needs. All of them have reading difficulties. And then some leave in the afternoon to go back to their rooms for math. Some stay with me for their math instruction, whatnot. So when Dad and Ruger would come in, that would be like first thing in the morning, and we would be focused solely on reading, and it was primarily phonics, a phonics program that we were doing during that block of time, that he would be in the classroom with us. So, but yeah, that's what I.
All right, so it went from a second grade classroom to an intervention specialist. Oops. A context that specifically serves students with special needs. And although they've only been in the classroom for, I believe, 6 to 8 months, I want us to give an opportunity for them to talk about some of the impacts that they've noticed already.
This is much more of a raised adult. You are an educator. Yeah, not in a professional manner, maybe, but it was actually, from my side, being an outsider coming in, Coshocton Elementary School, attorney manager have been very supportive. Several of lots of teacher friends have been very excited and supportive and wanting me to come to their room. And I keep on saying, he's not ready, and, give me some time. But there's a list, I guess, who wants to see Ruger come in. We did visit a couple other classrooms, but specifically in my daughter's class, Mrs. Smith's class, 3rd grade, she has intervention classroom, and she shows like 12 kids, I think, on and off. But it's really, from my side of it is, we're already in the classroom and they come in and their eyes light up. Oh, there's a dog. And so they're trying to concentrate on him. And the first couple of times they were really excited, but then it kind of became more of, they knew what was needed to be done. So she would say, okay, we're going to circle time with Ruger. And there's some pictures where he's sitting in the background on his bed, waiting to be able to do something. But just them participating in the classroom quickly and getting through things so they could do other things with Ruger. And they were doing words in the circle, I don't know, the teaching side of it, but they were doing words, and then they got something right, they were able to do pet Ruger and give him treats. So they wanted to get words right so they could go do it. And then everybody got to pay him at the end. There was a little girl, I think I mentioned to you, she was really kind of quiet and shy and didn't really want anything to do with him. And, it was probably about the 3rd or 4th time, like, she finally took a treat and she wanted to give him the treat, but she was kind of cool. It's like, I don't remember the name, but, it's like, okay, you got to teach Ruger to go fart. So I said, come and sit, and then come and fart. And she was like, real quiet. No, we really got to tell him what to do. And then she finally did it, and then Ruger went over and jumped on his cot, and she kind of looked up and was kind of like, oh, roll it, what was that? And so a big smile on her face. There's just little things like that, but it's more so even walking into the class, the school, the kids are walking by, you get to see them, they all point, and, obviously they light up, and they're happy to see a dog. So it's been rewarding on that side for me. I'm not doing anything, Ruger's doing it. I'm just there to make sure he minds himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they definitely love him, grew to love him more so. Of course, there were several students of mine who immediately were all about and got a little crazy in a sense, forgot their classroom routine and expectations when they saw Ruger come in. But they absolutely adored him, and we're always looking forward to always asking, especially usually the same three, we're always asking every week, is Ruger gonna come this week? Is Ruger gonna come this week? Is Ruger gonna come this week? So, oh my goodness. There you go. Yeah. But there was one instance in particular where we had one of my students who wasn't quite so involved per se, primarily with some of the lessons we were doing, because he in particular has the biggest difficulty with reading. So he's kind of like textbook dyslexic student, and he has anything that's ELA based, but not, of course, he was shut down with. So we were doing some phonics-based activities and games. And at this point, we had River actually join in our circle, but we were sitting on the floor, spider web kind of game. And we had Ruger sitting in the circle with us, and he just so happened to be sitting next to that student, and that definitely seemed to amp up his participation a little more, which was nice to see. But yeah, definitely calming some nerves, especially when it came for some test review and test practice. Normally I don't give tests at all on Thursdays, but we always do a review in the morning. But yeah, definitely made the kids very much more so eager to participate in lessons that involved Ruger being alongside of most of the time, whether it was just sitting next to them, or especially if they answered something correct or whatnot, we would then have them like give them a treat or something or all that. Normally at the end of every visit, the last like 5 minutes, they would be leaving to go to their specials, whether it was like art, gym, computers, anything like that. But in that last 5-minute time, you would actually have them participate with pretty much training Ruger. So Dad would hand them all these treats. They would line up and they'd all take turns telling him to go sit or drop or have a paw, whatnot. They really, really enjoyed that. And it helped Ruger out a good bit too. So
much more of a
Brave adult. You are an educator. So much has already been going to just keep the work moving within the elementary school. There is work still to be done. Darcy talks about the need to think about how do we integrate a therapy dog into structured curriculum where pacing guides are typically at play, and there become little or limited opportunities for play and engagement with the dog. So we're thinking more deeply about how to structure in those interactions in ways that support learning and maintain it over time. I know I just saw.
leaving from my 2 week vacation here with my son. Moving here from California to Oklahoma. We were actually having an administrative meeting with the school superintendent and the principal of the building. And I think it was one of them who actually outlined what the school district wants to see for at least the Shotgun Elementary therapy dog program. So I'm kind of part of the uncharted waters with the school district. I guess now there's several other people that heard what I was doing has now come forward and said, hey, we want to do this too. And the school wants to embrace it, it sounds like, and we're supposed to have something established by fall. So if River can achieve his class and pass his class, we'll be able to participate in the fall. My employer has been super supportive of what I'm doing and let me manage some work hours so I can get into the school. So ultimately, I would like to try to get in 1 day, 2 days a week, specifically with a teacher that is coming up. I think some of the lessons research was about reducing anxiety at test time and before test time and after test time. Even though more you guys go to the original research, but it's just something maybe to lighten the kids up and be able to get in there, and I'll leave it to the teachers on what they need to do. But I kind of have the okay with to get in once or twice a week. I was there for a few hours, and then I can also let someone else, like my trainer, she's even willing and volunteered to go in. So the bill is being in, and then basically the pack work for the other dogs that want to come in.
Right.
Prior to
So
me
thank
leaving,
you.
my students
Thank you for your patience. But as you can see, the work that Leslie began envisioning is being translated into action by the family and the teachers who love her so much. I also wanted to create opportunity to, particularly as we're in education, there was a memorial scholarship created in her name. If you are interested in supporting her legacy, you can donate to the Conshockton Foundation to support this scholarship that will be serving graduating seniors who want to become educators. So thank you for your time. Sorry, run over a bit.
Thank you. I know we're short. Dr. Hill and the Croft family, I can't think of a better way to honor the legacy of Leslie Croft. So fantastic work.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate hearing about all the presentations and hearing all the good questions. Wish we had another hour.